Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Berneman, your host, and I have the pleasure to be joined currently in Costa Rica by Brendon Watt. Thank you so much, Brendon, for being here, for taking the time for this conversation with us. And for everybody that is watching and listening to us, can you share a little bit about you? Who is Brendon? What's your story?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It is an honor to be your guest on this show. I'm me. You know, I grew up in Australia, as you can hear by the accent, in very, very kind of middle, lower class family, and didn't have an easy time growing up at all. You know, I had abuse as a young kid and then a lot of bullying at school, and basically just, I didn't know where I fit at all. And so through my teenage years, I found things to take me away from that discomfort, one of which being alcohol, weed, other things like that. And it was just my escape. So throughout my late teens and then 20s, I became a tradesman when I left school. So that was the thing that everyone said, that's all you can really do, and so I had this picture of my life painted for me, what I thought was the only thing that I could live. And so I created that. And by the time, through my 20s, there was a lot of partying and drinking and doing whatever. But by the time I got to 29, I was basically just done with life. I'd left a relationship with my son's mother. He was 4 at the time. And I couldn't find any sense of me, any sense of joy. And I was pretty much done. So I was sharing a bedroom with my kiddo at my mum's house, this tiny little bedroom. And one day I was just like, you know what, if this is it, I'm out of here. Universe, what have you got? Please help. Please show me something different. And it was the next day I actually found this tiny little ad in the newspaper that said, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Call Mel. And I was like, what? I can't even, it was in the personal, it was like, I think it might have been in the massage section of this newspaper or holistic section. And, so I called this girl and she said, well, I do this thing called the Access Consciousness bars. And basically it's 32 points on the head that when lightly touched, it's like they basically delete all of the crap that's going on in your mind. And I was like, okay. So I went and met this girl and had a session, and it was really confronting. Like she was just as nervous as I was. And she's like, all right, so you're going to lay down on this massage table. And she said, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And she started asking me just kind of questions about where I was at in my life. And I sobbed for 90 minutes in this session. And that was the beginning for me, the beginning of kind of letting myself back in.
That's such an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. There's a lot of times, it's so interesting how life works with synchronicities. With that, it's like you're at this point that it's kind of like talking to the universe, and then it's like go to the newspaper the next day and there's something that calls you there because you could have not gotten that newspaper or go past that page or whatever, but for some reason you went there and you found this woman and you found access bars like that. It's such an amazing tool to support you with that. So what came after that for you in terms of your life? Like, okay, like you were living in that tiny room with your kid in your mom's house, and you discovered this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me say to that thing of, like that thing with synchronicity and asking for something and it shows up. I've had that so many times throughout my life, and I'm sure all of us have, like where we can look at, we've gotten to a point where we've asked for something and then boom, there it is. And I know for me, how much I've stopped that capacity of actually receiving with, well, universe, can I have this, but don't take this away from me? And universe, can I have this, but can you make it show up exactly this way so I can actually receive it? So many times like that. And I see where so many of us eliminate receiving, with that point of view and the judgments that we have in place. But to your question, so I started getting a session with this girl once a week. And it was just more space was opening up in my world. And like I said, living at my mother's house, I think it was after about a month, so maybe 4 sessions, my mom said to me, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm just like, I met this girl, I'm getting these sessions." And she was like, "What is it?" And she started asking me about it. People around me started noticing me different. And then it was from that point, I actually took a class with this girl to actually learn how to do this process. And the thing that kind of blew me away in that class was I never thought I could be a contribution to somebody else. So me learning something where I could use that technique to be like, hey, you've got this stuff going on, let me try this new thing that I learned, was just, that was, I think, the beginning for me. Well, not necessarily the beginning, but more of a maybe more of an acknowledgement of what I always knew, that I really desired to contribute and be a contribution in the world.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's like, even, I mean, I think we really underestimate the power of us being us. And for me, it was like, I was finally had this space in my world where I knew that I was becoming more of who I actually am.
Wow. This Brendon, there's one of the projects that I've been working now for the last 8, almost 9 years. It's called You Being You. It's all about the understanding that all that we have to do is just being us. And that, in a sense, that's our contribution. That's the gift and the medicine that we're bringing into this world. That's all that we have to do. Yet there's so much programming, there's so much conditioning, there's so much of our childhood experiences and traumas and what came before that, and all of that is on the way, that we behave in certain ways that takes us, as you were saying, away from us being just us, and understanding that us being us and our presence, and that we are in a sense already worthy, instead of having to like get validation from outside and all of these things that prevents us from actually going to the essence of who we are. And like this, I think that this is part of the human experience. We come here, we don't know that we have, like in the Buddhist perspective, like I learned this from what is called Buddha nature. Like we don't know that we are already enlightened beings, yet we are. So how do we get there? It's the process.
Yeah, and I think I think part of it is we actually do know, but we're never acknowledged for it. Because I mean, how many of us are actually not acknowledged for the being that we are, and encouraged and nurtured to bring out more of those gifts? Like, I mean, even that thing that we touched on with the receiving thing is, one thing I know is you cannot have receiving and judgment in the same universe, because anything that you have a judgment of, you can't receive anything that doesn't match it. It's this is the way it is, a judgment or a decision or a conclusion. So I know for me, as a kid, it was just, as a young kid, I knew there must have been something more out there, and then you start school and it was like, and then it's like, okay, now I need to get it right. I definitely can't be wrong. How do I fit in? Where do I not fit? Where do I benefit? It's just like you said, that programming. And also it's this with the awareness that a lot of us have as well, which is another thing that we don't necessarily acknowledge. See, one of the great gifts I got, one of the first tools I got, and it was in one of these sessions, was this girl talked about this tool called Who Does It Belong To? And basically what we talk about is 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions don't actually belong to you. That psychic and that aware, you picked them up from everywhere around you. And I remember the first time I heard this, I was like, oh my God, that explains my life. Because I wondered why I could be out, be in the ocean or be out in nature and have this sense of space. And within a heartbeat, it was gone. And, when she gave me this tool and she said, look, anytime any thought, feeling, or emotion shows up, just ask, who does it belong to? If it lightens up at all, it's not yours, just return it to sender. And I use that tool like crazy, because I was like, I always wondered how I could be almost like this broadcasting beacon that everything would seem to just stick to. But what I realized was it was always the things that always stuck to me were always the energetics that I found familiar from this programming. So for me, I grew up with a lot of abuse, a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, a lot of poverty, just the fun stuff like that. But so any thought that came into my head that matched that energy was automatically mine, because I decided that was me. So, and I see this with so many of us. We'll have the kind of familiar energetics that we function from. And then it's just this, basically you go about your life creating that, which kind of sticks to that, and it doesn't have anything to do with what's actually true for you.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. Who does it belong to? I was introduced to a very similar practice, and it was more like, who says that? And it was like anytime that I thought or something internally was coming up, especially like, well, it was just completely like anytime that I noticed there's a thought, is who says that? Like, is that actually me, or is that coming from someplace else or someone else? And I think that when you were sharing that, I was like, oh wow, that's I did. It's not exactly the same, but it resonates. So I hope that for everybody listening, if any of those two questions resonates, like, use it, because it can be super powerful. And I want to go back to what you said, Brendon, about like that receiving. It's interesting because I notice most of us, we have a huge imbalance of the giving and the receiving. So therefore we are not balanced there in our energetics. But as well, what you said, we are actually receiving unconsciously, but we're receiving what we have been primed to receive, which is what you said. Like, if we have been conditioned to whichever mechanisms that we have developed and tendencies for survival, what we know and is familiar, then we're actually going to be magnetizing that until the moment that we can be more conscious and we can choose more intentionally, and we can actually understand what it is that we want to receive. And as with the word that you used, like, what is that broadcasting bringing, and what we can pick up, but also what do we decide that it's not ours to take because it's someone else's. So it's that interesting dynamic of understanding that, yes, we have all been primed to be in this certain way, and until we can realize that life can be different, that is just, in a sense, a story or something that we've been conditioned, that is not who we are, that is not our essence, then it's going to be hard to change what keeps on coming in.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things that you said there was that, once we recognize this, we can actually choose. And that's for me been one of the greatest gifts and has been to realize that I've created my life exactly the way that it is based on my choices. And I was always, before I found Access, I was always like, why is this happening to me? Like, why can I not seem to find my way in this world? Why is this world against me? Why? And it was all this victim mentality, this victimhood that allowed me to access no power, nothing to do with, wow, I could actually make a different choice. And because I see where a lot of us do that, even with the way that this reality functions, and with, it's all about what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, where do I fit, how do I not lose? And all of those elements set you up for no receiving or very limited receiving. And so even with that, I see where a lot of us go, well, I'm kind of at the effect of that, rather than recognize, no, I'm actually choosing to be the effect of it. And once we recognize that, it's the same with if you're let's say you're in an abusive relationship or family situation or something like that, and it's, I'm being abused, there's one thing, or I'm choosing to stay to be abused. I'm choosing to be the effect of this abuse. Which one has more power? Even in that, as the recognition, because I've seen where I've done this, and we'll probably get into this, where I've seen where I did this with addiction, and I've had stuff with addiction my whole life. And it wasn't until last year that I really looked at it. But the thing that really began to set me free was when I recognized I actually chose to be that. Because even with addiction, the things would get me stuck in these different things that I would do, where they'd be like, it's the wiring in your brain's off, and it's a chemical imbalance, and, different things like that, which it is. But also it wasn't, there was still nowhere in that where I could see where I'd chosen that. And it wasn't until I went, wow, I actually chose to be chemically imbalanced also, that I had a lot more choice.
Yeah, that's, it's that taking responsibility. Some people call it taking radical responsibility or whatever. It's that recognition that even if it might be completely unconscious, we are choosing all of the time. We are choosing our reality.
Yeah.
Like this has been like through the years working, especially with those that from the example that you shared, that have been abused or are in an abusive circumstance or are in a really toxic space. The taking responsibility it's something that has been really challenging for a lot of the people that I work through the years to be like, I am choosing actually that. It's not in a sense taking responsibility for what the others are doing, but it's taking responsibility for what you're saying. I am choosing to stay in this. And this is not, like putting people down or judging them or anything. Like this is about just the recognition that if I'm choosing this, I can also choose different. And understanding, of course, there might be a process, there might be a way of recognizing the patterns of survival and the mechanisms that person has developed to stay in the place, because even though that might be toxic or abusive, that is the known, that is what they know. They don't know anything else. So therefore, the choosing different is such an unknown that potentially this is like more comfortable, even though it's really unhealthy for the person.
Well, and that's that thing of, you say it's like we don't know anything else. Well, we can't access anything else because it doesn't match what we've judged as our reality. So for me, as like, or even like you talk about somebody in abuse and in an abusive situation or an abusive relationship, it's like they can't even fathom the idea of what it would be like to be out of that abuse, because their reality is all about it and has been created by it, based on it. And I think that's one of the things that keeps a lot of us stuck too, because you would look at that, and here's one of the things that I see people, and I've seen where I've done this too, where they get a bit stuck in the whole choice idea, because like you said, a lot of it's done from this unconscious space, or basically done from unawareness or unconsciousness. And so like with that, it's not that question of, well, but why would I choose this? Like, I can't be choosing it because there is no reason and justification for why I would choose it. Yeah, but the reason and justification is the thing that gets us stuck, rather than just go, wow, I chose it. And although it wasn't from a linear or a cognitive place, I've actually made that choice. That alone, and I speak for myself with this also, set me free so much. Because even the thing with addiction, one of the things that got me really stuck, that's only I would say unlocked in my world very recently, was I've done, a lot of these interviews and stuff like that as well. And there was always this kind of, I guess, kind of like a sour taste of like, yeah, but you're talking about access and all these phenomenal tools and choosing to be everything you are and stuff like that. How could you have had all of those tools and then still had this go on with addiction? And it used to really get me stuck. And I was talking with a friend recently, and he said, let me ask you this. Did you choose it exactly the way you needed to get to where you are right now? And I went, yes, without a shadow of a doubt, I chose it exactly the way I needed to. Because see, this is where we can get ourselves out of that victimhood also. Like if you're in an abusive situation or something like that, and I'm not sure why I keep going to abuse, but maybe it's because people listening have got that going on. But it's like, if you can recognize that, first of all, with the question of what awareness am I having here, that if I acknowledged it would make that a gift. Because then in that you can go, oh, okay, what awareness am I having? Wow, this is all I really have ever thought I can have. Even in that acknowledgement, then you can go, okay, so have I chosen this exactly the way I needed to get to this point so I can make a different choice? Then you're in the driver's seat. Then you can go, all right, cool. I've chosen it. I'm here. Cool. I've got a lot of power, because if I can put up with this shit for this long, I must be pretty amazing. And then like you just, even in that acknowledgement, I know for me, when I do that, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not as pathetic as I'm trying to make myself out to be.
The stories that one can tell themselves in their heads, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to know, Brendon, going back to your experience with addiction and alcohol. I wanted to get a sense of, through the work and the awareness that you have now, to share, because in my experience, a lot of times when I see some of the addictions that I had, and some of the ways that I share with the people that I work with, there's these addictions, whether that's alcohol, drugs, or food, or whatever it is, they are the mechanisms that actually allow us to either escape our reality, our feelings, or they match what we were talking earlier. It matches like what we know from what we have learned. So there's a lot of times I see people talking about addiction as something negative or bad. I'm like, well, no, there's this is actually supporting your survival. So once that recognition is there, then perhaps there's something different to do. So can you share a little bit more about, for your experience, what have you learned from it?
Well, first of all, I love the way that you put that, because it is so, see, people love to put things in a box. Let me put addiction in this box. It's bad, it's wrong, it's a bit, you just pulled up several different points with it also, where it's like people will use it. See, because what you're addicted to is always just the symptom. There's always the stuff underneath it. But it's, see, for me, And especially towards the end, like when my alcoholism really progressed, it definitely, two things which you touched on there, took me away from being present, took me away from definitely being everything that I am, but also it matched the point of view that I had about myself, the worthlessness, the shame, the things that I didn't show the world, you know. And so for me, I always kind of struggled with putting an image forward, like always trying to be something in the world so that other people would receive me. What have I got to be for you? What have I got to be for you? What have I got to be for you? And I, you know, in being with Access and, you know, and being with that, I actually became quite a well-known speaker. And so I was still looking at this image thing, like, what's it going to take for me just to get over this? Well, when my addiction hit the point last year, where it was basically change or die, I publicly came out with it, you know, and hundreds of thousands of people got notified that, hey, Brendon's had a drinking problem his whole life. He's now choosing to deal with it. And I was like, well, there goes your image, you know. And it was humbling, but it was also so confronting to be in front of this thing, in front of this, the energetics of what I decided I was, like this less than, this creature that was always in doubt of himself, this someone who could appear to be confident, really confident, but actually, from my point of view, didn't have much at all. And I had to be with that and really use every tool that I have and explore it, because I think that's the thing for us as well with addiction, is we're trying to get away from who we actually are. And there is always beauty underneath the judgments you have of you, always. Which sounds weird, sounds kind of counterintuitive when you're like, no, I'm wrong for this stuff. No, what if every wrongness was your greatest strongness? And for me, when as I started exploring it over the last 18 months, it's like the amount of strength that I've found, the amount of all the, you know, elements of being that I've found that were there all along, that I had just covered up with all the shit that I'd bought as real and true about me that wasn't. And I think that for dealing with addiction is, you know, for me, AA was really helpful in getting me sober. You know, the 12-step program. And I did that, and I did a lot of meetings. But one of the things I saw with AA was really good for somebody who could do the same thing over and over again, you know, and have that kind of same monotonous path as their life, which is great if that works for you. That doesn't work for me. I have way too much energy. I love way too much change. So for me, I knew that if I was going to stay sober, I needed to learn and actually create my life, to actually create the life and living that was congruent with not this piece of shit that I thought I was, but all the stuff underneath it. And I see that as a big part with addiction too, is if we're going to have success with it, especially with the people who are extremely sensitive and, you know, and are kind of like, you know, what else? And like, and, you know, kind of, let's say, can see themselves in anything that I just said, is we've got to look at what kind of a life do you desire to create? Like, what kind of a future would you like to have, so that we've got something to actually pull into our universes. Like that thing of, hey, universe, help. That last year when I was really struggling was my tool. You know, and the universe was, I finally started allowing me back in, because if we look at, see, we've got, in Access Consciousness, we've got a definition of what consciousness is. Consciousness includes everyone and everything and judges no one or nothing. So if we look at that as, and without getting too out there, it's like, if we look at that as we're interconnected to every single molecule in the universe. So me asking the universe, please help me, I'm also asking me as a being, hey, I'm here and I'm begging for it. because I know I'm not being me right now. I'm being this big when I know I'm this big. Help, and I still do that now. It's like, if I'm kind of just off or whatever, it's like, what would I choose right now if I was actually being me?
That's a great question. I thank you, first of all, for sharing all of that. Like, it's interesting how, especially if we are in the public sphere, to be able to open up, and to share, and I often say to people, vulnerability, like,
Yeah.
it's, not only it's a great superpower, like, that's just honesty, like, that's just not hiding, and
Yeah.
it's going beyond the judgments. And I love what you just said, because as well, that interconnectedness, for me, everything is energy, everything is connected. I am that. It's just like the drop in the ocean is the ocean. Like, it's not
Yeah.
it's not separate. Like, yet we do have our unique dynamic configuration on all of this. And when we understand that we are tapped into consciousness, into the whole, that we can actually co-create, we need to ask. And the importance of having that vision for, like, the future of how we can be, not perhaps exactly like how the circumstances look like. I'm more of the, like, I'm just going to bring the quality, and that's what I actually envision. I bring it, I feel it, I vibrate with that, and then however the universe is going to bring me that, then I'm good with it. And that is, most people that I have talked to, they have no idea. They know what they don't want, but they don't know what they do want. They know, as you're saying, they don't know who they are. They don't know how they can be congruent to who they are. And it is about, in a sense, that taking responsibility and having a different vision, choosing differently so that we can get there. And at the same time, it's that understanding, okay, I'm here. This is my experience. As you're saying, you have this addiction, and there's different ways also to get support, like AA and other people on other methodologies, and knowing that not every methodology is going to be the right one for each of us, whereas it might be the thing that supports someone. How can we do that? There's going to, like, to alcohol. Like, I I haven't had a drink in, I don't even remember how many years. I was never, alcohol wasn't one of my things. I had other watching TV and, like, being online, food. Those were more of my poisons. But I have noticed so much how in some of the countries that I have lived in, alcohol is so accepted, in a sense, as opposed to some of the other addictions, that most people even don't understand what they are doing. And mostly, I have found that, as you were saying, being present and being able to be in touch with who we are by being sober, it's such a different type of experience. Like, with a lot of the people that I have worked through the years that they went sober, it's like, oh wow, like, this is me, kind of like, this is who I could be. And it's so interesting to understand that, who am I if I'm not actually putting all of this down? Who am I if I can allow myself without all of these things? But in order to allow all of those things, we need, as you say, to take responsibility, to choose, and to have honesty, and, in a sense, go beyond judgments. And I like the word forgiveness a lot. Like, forgiving, in a sense, what we have done if we are holding any judgment, or forgiving others if we are holding judgment.
Yeah. And that part doesn't work. It doesn't create anything. And I think that thing of, I remember doing the 8th step in the 12-step program, which was making amends. The 8th step was creating a list. The 9th step was actually doing it. And it was that, you know, it took me 6 months. I didn't even go there until I was 6 months sober, because I knew if I was going to actually do this with the people in my life, I was going to mean it, you know, and I was one of them. And I was the hardest one to actually forgive, and still, you know, still to really have that forgiveness and allow that healing in that, you know, that a lot of us kind of keep out, and actually just be like, hey, it's okay, I got this, you know. And even like, I mean, we could even picture ourselves as little kids and kind of, you know, get a sense of what that kid's going to be walking through over the next several years, and just kind of be there for them and be like, hey, I'm here with you, I've got your back, and there's going to be some times where you kind of don't know who you are, and I'm going to be there for that too. And that for me is just an acknowledgement of, take time out of the equation. You as a being, how would you be with the younger you if you were there now? You know, if you could be with that little kid, how would you be with them? I know for me, I'd be like giving that little kid a hug and be like, hey, let's, you know, I'm here to support you, because that kid never had that. That kid never had a hug. You know, I remember as a kid, I didn't get a hug from my father. And that just tormented me through growing up. It was like, all I wanted was that man to love me. And what I realized was later in life, that man was not capable of love. He didn't love himself, let alone have any desire to have it for anybody else. So my whole life, I grew up thinking, what's wrong with me? You know, so if I could be with that kid now, I'd be like, there is nothing wrong with you. You're amazing. And I say that because I would have that as an invitation for all of us to recognize that whatever you've been through, in any abuse that you've had in your life, it is never personal. It was never because of anything that you were not being. It was always because of something that you were being, and something that actually showed somebody else that you actually had more power than they have. And that was something that you've always had tried to be taken away from you. And it's just, without, you know, making that significant, it's just as an acknowledgement also.
Yeah. Like a lot of times I talk about, you know, reclaiming our power back, because like most of us have lost it through our experiences. And I love what you say, because a lot of times I work a lot with systemic family constellations as well. The recognition that those that didn't give us what we needed, our parents or anyone in our family or anyone in our circumstances, that potentially made us believe that we weren't valued, we weren't worth it, we weren't, you know, like lovable, or whatever it is, that story that most of us grow up with when we have any kind of situation that we didn't receive what we got, that what we wanted to get. It's not about us. It's, as you said, like the other person is not able to give that to us. But it's not about us not being worthy. It's about the capacity that they didn't have to show us that. And until the moment that we can acknowledge that, and we can realize, you know, like I see this so much for the people that come to see me, the click that happens when they're able to see that their parents had their own stuff going on, that they didn't do the things that they did to them because of them. It was because of their own experience, what they have learned, their own blockages, their own stories, their own whatever. And it's like, when we can go and see that, it can soften so much the judgment that we hold for ourselves, and how freeing it is to be able to go from that victim to understanding, like, not only we are everything, we are worth it, we are love, we are lovable, we can give love. This actually, like, all of the image that we have of ourselves that we have judged, like, we can go past it. And when we do that, we can live. Like, I often say, like, I remember the time that I didn't know this, but that I realized when I dropped it, I was holding on to a 50-kilo backpack that I didn't know that I was carrying. And suddenly one day I'm like, wow, this is what it feels like to live without that, which I didn't know that was there.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you, man. It's like I walked around with an elephant on my head forever, and it's like, but that thing of if you desire freedom, you got to get over judgment as the source for anything, because judgment is only ever destructive. It doesn't create anything at all except destruction. And so, that thing with, for me, you just recognize that, okay, my parents did the best job they could do with what they had available at the time also, but also the recognition that, speaking a little bit about the energetics that we have is you come in as a little kid, and for the first couple of years of your life, you don't see any separation between you and your parents. You basically, from your point of view, you are them. That you're figuring out the world around you through them. So it's great question that you can ask too is like, when I find myself kind of just saying something or just not being me, it's like, who am I being right now? And 90% of the time, it'll be one of my parents, and then it's like, okay, drop that. And then what would I choose if I was being me right now?
And, one of the things like with that is that I realized through the years, both of my own experience and what I shared with a lot of my students and my clients, is asking the question, do you have a relationship with yourself? Do you have a relationship with your mind, with your body, with your feelings and understanding? And how can we cultivate a better relationship with ourselves? How can we cultivate more presence? Which for me, a lot of times, if I'm present and I can acknowledge and I can feel and I can be, then I'm free. Like this is for me, that combination. What, in your experience, like what, based on the things that you have already said, what have you done and what can you share with people that are wanting to develop a better relationship with themselves?
I would say question everything. And that is going to take some practice. But if you begin that if you go to judgment of yourself, see, you can't create a great relationship with yourself if you're in judgment of you. You certainly can't have any gratitude for yourself with that. So one way out of that, first of all, is make the demand of you. You know what? I'm gonna stop, to the best of my ability. I'm gonna stop this judgment that I'm doing of myself. And then when it comes up, ask, what's right about me I'm not getting, and what's right about this I'm not getting. The other thing, and so many things, but the other thing is what I do is destroy and uncreate the definitions that I have of myself every day, the relationship that I have with myself every day, and the relationship I have with others every day. And, people hear that and they're like, what, you mean destroy my relationships? No, destroy and uncreate it so that you actually, you can now be creative with it every day. So you're not like, well, I was in a relationship with this person yesterday, or here's how my relationship was with me yesterday, so here's how it is today. What if you're starting again today? And what if it was learning more about who you are today? But with those questions, notice when you come to conclusion, well, this is just who I am. No, that's just who you've defined yourself as. So when that comes up, more questions. And 4 of the questions we use in Access, you can use with anything, is what is this? What do I do with it? Can I change it? And if so, how do I change it? And this was one of the things with Access where I was like, because for my whole life, I was like, give me a question, I need to find the answer. But that's not how question works. And that's not what it was designed for. Question is designed to give you an awareness. So that's about asking, questions, for example, what's right about me I'm not getting, is just asking it and kind of allowing something to show up with that. And same with any of those questions, it's allowing something to show up with that, and just kind of find whatever it takes, find what kindness is for you. You know, like we beat the shit out of ourselves. So notice when you're doing it and just stop. What's something? Can I go and sit in the grass? Can I go and put my feet in the grass? Can I call someone I care about? Can I, like, what I'd say is something that I've done with this, with creating a relationship with myself, but also getting out of sticky moments. Because some of us have a really good capacity to go down rabbit holes. Like you'll smell the rabbit hole, you kind of see the rabbit hole, and then it's like, I've got to go down it. I've got to go down and check out what's down there, you know, and within a heartbeat, you're like, where am I? You know, I'm miserable. But it's like, so create yourself a little bit of a being you list is what I would say to people. So what are some things that when you're stuck and when you're in the funk, you know, when you've got the elephant on your head, have some resources there. So for me, I've got access classes. I've got some close friends that I would call. I've got processes and tools that I would use. I would nature, you know, I'd be out, you know, I would tap into my horses. I would whatever. But I got a list of stuff. And so rather than sit in the shit and try and figure out why you're in the shit, because there's never a why. There's never a why you treat yourself that way. There's never a why to anything. Is question, what's it going to take for me to change this? What have I got to be or do different here that would allow this to change? And I got to add this in there because it keeps popping into my head. One of the greatest gifts of access consciousness is the clearing statement, which is just weird. And I heard this in the first session I did. When that girl asked me these questions, she was like, do you mind if I use this crazy clearing statement? And I was like, sure, go for it. And it's right and wrong, good and bad, pod and poc, all nine, shorts, boys, povats, and beyonds. Now, basically, if you want more information on it, you can check out this long, epic video that's called at theclearingstatement.com. But basically what it is it's a way of taking you back energetically to the point of creation. When you took on the point of view that's creating this pile of crap, and that could be 100 years ago, whenever, undoing that point of view there so it actually changes the future and the past. And so this was such an awesome tool for me because I was like, I would use it with everything. So, but basically the way it works is by asking a question, you're going to bring up an energy. And then what you do with that is you clear the energy, clear the energetics of it. So what I do also is when I just can't even seem to find a way out of something, it's everything that allows this to exist. I now destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, pod and poc, all nine, shorts, boys, povats, and melons. I might do that 5 or 10 times also. And then if you're anything like me, you could take that process and kind of play around with it and be like, wow, what would it take for today to be the greatest day I've had so far? Everything that doesn't allow that, use that clearing statement. You know, what would it take for me to have more ease in this situation with my family? Everything that doesn't allow that, you got the clearing statement, you know. And so what you're doing with that is you're clearing out all this stuff that doesn't allow you to have what it is you're asking for.
Wonderful. For everybody listening, rewind, go back to everything that Brendon just said, write down those questions, go to that website and use this. This is one of the things that I keep on talking about. And this was one of the most powerful things for me. One, what you said about asking questions, but two, taking action and incorporating the information into my life. Because if I don't incorporate it, if I actually, if I resonate with this, like you're saying, actually saying that statement, actually asking those questions, actually taking the action. This is why this is the Conscious Action Podcast, because just awareness by itself, without taking any conscious action, will keep us where we are, because most likely we are going to revert back to our tendencies and what is known. So I love that what you say, the destroy and then create. That a lot of times I say it I use the word unlearning. Like I'm just going to unlearn and I'm going to bring a fresh perspective. It's like I'm in my room now. I have lived here for years. How can I every single day, how can I bring some freshness into this? How can I see it with new eyes? Because I am different, therefore this is different. The molecules are different. How can I allow that to take place? And for me, asking questions, what you said, is so powerful. And asking questions without, like, I remember I was a teenager, and my teacher told me, you don't want an answer. You just need to find the right question. Like, it's not about the answer.
Exactly.
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. But isn't that interesting that we're all taught, and what a phenomenal teacher. You know, can we have more teachers like that in the world, please? But it's like we're all taught to find the answer, but it's actually the question that empowers. The answer always disempowers. The answer, conclusion, judgment, all of it is you've hit a brick wall, because once again, once you get the answer to your question, you can't receive anything beyond that answer. Yes. Nothing else can come into your universe. And I think that's that part of unlearning. For, you know, you want to have a greater relationship with you. You want to be more of who you are, unlearn who you think you are. You know, and that's another thing I love about Access, is it's about empowering you to know what you know, but it's also an acknowledgement that there's nothing missing in you. You know, I always used to think, I want to find out who I am, like it was somewhere outside of me, but it was always just, it's right here. You know, I just got to get rid of the shit that I've buried on top of me. But it's an acknowledgement, and it's a way of accessing the consciousness that you already are, each and every one of us.
Yes, it's removing the veils that prevent us from seeing the treasure that is already within. And that is, you know, like, such a powerful thing to realize, that we don't need to find, we don't need to keep on finding. We just need to realize who we are by doing the work of removing all of those veils, or removing anything that prevents us. Like, I always resonated with the world in Buddhism. The concept of self-images. With that, is like, can I just remove all of the self-images that I have created, that others have created in me, that I'm taking on as well, and on, you know, all of that. And it's so wonderful what you have shared. So for everybody listening, I do recommend, go back, rewind back, listen to what we have talked about, take them on. If you resonated with this, take them on, implement them, and actually do something about this. Because if you're not in the place that you want to be, understand that, in a sense, you are choosing this. So use the questions that we have shared. And Brendon, as we're running out of time here, I could talk to you for so much longer. Where can people find you if they are interested in this and going a little bit deeper?
They can find me at brendonwatt.com, my website. I also just did a free video series that's out there. You can find it on my website, or it's brendonwatt.com/rise, RISE. But also check out Access Consciousness. There's a bunch of amazing facilitators. There's so much cool stuff out there. And the other thing I just want to say on that quickly is, one of the things I've learned is that if I'm not in question, if I'm not actively seeking more of me, then this reality is creating me for me, you know. And so I say that because I like to use that as kind of an awareness in my world, that if I'm not waking up and in question, I am being the effect.
Wonderful. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Brendon, for sharing your story, for taking the time to be here, for a wonderful conversation. I hope for everybody listening and watching us that there's something that you take away from this for your own life. Whatever resonated, please leave us a comment, share your stories, any questions that you can have. I'll put on the show notes so that you can find easy access to Brendon's website and his work. Thank you so much, Brendon, once more for being here, and keep on sharing all of this, because we need more of this in the world.
Yeah, we need more people who are willing to be the difference that they are. Definitely.
Beautiful. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using hashtag conscious action and tagging @consciousaction so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.